Welcome back to Millennial Tech and Millie Mini AI Bot. This is the FreeCAD course. This is lesson number 4. We are going to continue with this, and over here, this is a little preview of what we're actually going to be setting up. So if you notice, we have a lot of changes. If I go into our example, this one I deleted all of this so I can show you how to build that. So right now, this is where we left on the last video. Just so you know what we're doing, you only need to design one of these parts, and then you go to assemble them and you can position them wherever you need to. So this is where we start, right? This is like normal, I'm just working with bodies in FreeCAD. So we have the lower post, right? And then we have the whole tree of moves that we made from the binder, pad, first pocket, second pocket, third pocket, fourth pocket, fillet, another pocket, another fillet, a pad, a pocket, fillet, chamfer, right? So we have the part. We don't need that on. Now what we got to do, we can collapse that. We basically want to say, okay, we need to put all 3 of these bodies into parts, right? So how do we do that? Well, we need this thing called assembly 4. And assembly 4 is the one you want to use. You don't want to use assembly. So we need to go to Tools, and this is right here up in the top menu. Click on Tools, and then come down here to Add-on Manager, right? Add-on Manager, right here, click OK. It's going to bring this up. This needs to be connected to the internet, and then you're just going to type in assembly, right? You can see how it's downloading, so it's connecting. You're just going to click on assembly 4 right here. And you can see it says installed for me, right? So you click on it, and then up here, you will have the option to install it, right? So that's all you have to do. Click on it here, and then install it up here, and then you can hit close. So I have assembly 4 installed, right? And so now you do too. So now, in order to select it, we've always been in the parts design. We didn't really talk about this a lot because we didn't really need to change it yet. But up here, we've always been in parts design. What we want to switch to now is assembly. And what that really does is just define like what kinds of tools are up here, right? So you might get all these warnings. There's a lot of little kind of, this FreeCAD is going from like, a stable version to another stable version. So they're doing, I guess they're doing some changes. But basically, what you want to do now is you want to start creating points, right? Or creating parts. So the first thing we'll do is create a new part, right? So that's this yellow thing. So we have bodies that are blue, right? These are all bodies. And then now we have parts that are yellow, right? Enter new part name. So I'm going to copy the names of these, right? Bottom shelf, but I'm going to leave part there. So it's going to be bottom shelf, no capitals. Right? Bottom shelf part, right? Cool. What does that give us? Okay. So the nice thing about this is that it actually came with this local coordinate system origin point, which we will need, but we don't need it there. We're going to need to move this onto the face. So the first thing we're going to do is turn all of these other ones off, because we're just dealing with the bottom shelf and the bottom shelf part. But we see that origin point. We don't want that there. We actually want that to be on the face. So we're going to change that. So the first thing we actually do is throw this guy right here, drag him inside here. right? So click on the body, hold it, drag it inside, and throw it into the part. And that's all you need to do, right? But that origin point, if we look at from the front, is still right there. We need to change that origin point so it's actually on the face. So what we do with that is make sure we're in here. We want to open that up. Let's just delete it. So just so you know, it's up here, this guy right here. So if you have this selected and you click, if you have that selected and you click create a new point, right? It's going to create this new local coordinate system right there. And then all you have to do is select that top. That's going to go in right there, right? Hit XY on plane, and that pushes it down to that surface. Hit apply, and you're good. And you can see it's right there. Now, what does that do? That creates a point right there for us to assemble things, right? So if I want to use that point and match it up with another point, which is going to be on the next part, I can do that now, right? So let's turn that off, and let's actually turn that off. We'll turn the lower shelf on. So we're going to do the same thing with the lower shelf now, and we're going to do the opposite. So we're going to do it down here. So we do the new part, right? And this is going to be lower shelf part, right? And that put the XY coordinate system, the local coordinate system, inside of there. So what we want to do is we want to delete it. We want to put the lower shelf in the lower shelf part, right? And then we want to create a new point on the bottom here. So we're going to make sure that's highlighted. We're going to do that, right? LS2. I mean, it doesn't really matter what the name is, but we can do that. And then you see how it's still inside. What we want to do is select that face right there. That's going to come up here, and then we do it XY on plane. But we actually want to do inertial CS. And what that gives us is it just moves it down. It doesn't flip it so that it's on the back of the it's not coming off the surface of the face. It's just aligned with that plane, but it still remains Y is up. So this one would flip it upside down. This one leaves it true. So apply there and hit OK, right? So now we have those 2 points, right? And then the last one is this lower post. So then we do the lower post, right? Do the same thing. Add a new part. Lower post part, right? Throw the lower post in there. Open this up, right? Same steps. Take that guy, delete him, select that, new one, LCS 3. And then what we're going to do is we're going to select this guy right here. So it says selecting over here, selecting, grab that, and then we need it to be concentric, right? Z tangent to edge wouldn't make any sense. We actually want it to be concentric around that circle. So because we selected this edge, it gave us different options, obviously. You just want concentric. So you can see that that point right there is the mounting hole that we made from these guys. So those are the 3 mounting holes, and they already align, right? So now we can use all of those mounting holes as these local coordinate system reference objects or reference instances of something. So before it was a face that we did on the last 2 parts. Now we're actually using the edge condition, which is, it has a lot of different things. It's a line, right? This one we don't want. So yeah, we're good. So apply that and hit OK. So that's what you should have right there, right? Again, just select that, hit this guy right here, new coordinate system, and then when you go to edit it, make sure you click that lower edge, the bottom side, and then make sure you hit concentric. And that's basically it. And I'm obviously just going to put like the file. If you want to follow along, but you also just want to print one, I'll just put the files online so you can do it. If you get a little lost, maybe you could study the finished model a little more, and you could kind of, edit yours side by side with the finished version. That's not published yet, but it definitely will be by the end of this course. So now we have all of them, right? You can see that we have all these local points built. And then the only other thing we need to do is create on this lower shelf, we need to create some more points. So let's turn both of these off, right? And in the lower shelf, this guy, we're actually going to create the 4 points for these right here, right? So what we'll do is turn that off. We'll go up to here. We'll create another one, right? And what we'll do is we'll do LCS hole 1, just so I know. And basically what we'll do for that one is select that and select concentric, and it'll do the same thing for the underside of that post part. Hit apply, hit OK, and that's right there, right? But we can turn that off. Now select that again, hit this one more time, and it's going to be local coordinate system hole 2, okay? And then we select this guy, concentric, and that works out perfectly. Do it again, boom. Hole 3, select that guy, hit concentric, okay, hide them. And then last time, hole 4, right? Again, corner point, concentric, hit OK. Okay, so what did we just do? Well, we've got all of these points now, right? We've got this one on the underside, which we're going to match with the one on the top side of the part that's underneath, right? So those literally will be like on the same point. And then we have these 4 points, which we can assign to the 4 points on that one post. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one post part, right? And you know that it has this point here, right? See how they already align? So now all we have to do is say, hey, throw this part into the assembly, and where do you want it? Well, actually, I want that local coordinate system point to be exactly on top of this one and this one and this one and this one, and then all we have to do is just rotate them. So it's real easy. This is like, once you get it, it makes putting things together. Once you've modeled them, then you can assemble them, right? That's the logic. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna put all of these into an assembly now, right? New assembly. So click New Assembly, right? Make sure that you're on Assembly 4, and you should have this guy right here. And then we're just going to call it because I don't know where this is gonna be used yet, I'm just gonna call it Millie Mini Assembly. But you could just call yours Assembly. And now what this does is it puts all of your parts into a nice little folder, right? Here's all your parts. So you can just turn them all off at the same time, right? So that lower post part, I gotta turn that off. Yeah, you wanna turn all these off. So lower shelf part, turn all these off. You don't need to really look at these anymore. Okay, and now this is the origin point, right? That's the origin point of the assembly, we might say, right? I'm gonna go ahead and delete that. Make sure this is selected. Start with this guy, hit create datum object. Doesn't matter what the name is, right? See, it comes in up there, right? And where we want it is to be on the face here. So if we select the face, it's gonna go there. And then if we click XY on plane, it'll reverse it. Or if we hit inertial CS, it'll actually line up with that, which is that point right there, right? So there's that point right there and that point right there. Now they're perfectly aligned. So that's all you have to do. Hit apply, hit OK. And what that gave us is, without this on at all this is saying is there's a point right there in space, right? So now we want to put that lower shelf part into the assembly. So with that selected, we're going to go up here to insert part. Make sure that you choose the right one. Right now I'm saying example because I deleted the original one, but for you it might be whatever it is. Just make sure it's the lower shelf, right? It's not the bottom shelf, it's the lower one. So there's the lower shelf right there. Insert. You can see that it's kind of like showing you that's where it is. It's highlighted. And then all you have to do is select parent assembly up here, attach to a parent assembly, and attach to that point right there. Hit OK, and you're good to go. And then we can turn that off. So now the part is not up here, right? So if I turn off the entire assembly, we have the lower part right here, which has the lower shelf body. But if I turn that off, we also have it in the assembly now as the lower shelf part, right? And rename this to just include the word assembly with one E, turns out, right there. So you can see that that point, this point, what we're saying is this point right here and this point right here are now in the exact same spot, right? Now, okay, so I cleared up that little error, but I didn't do anything different. So sometimes it's just a glitch. I basically just deleted them, created them again, and now it's working fine. So we have the assembly, we have the lower shelf part, but it's in the assembly, right? And then all of these parts, right? All of the parts are off. And now just the assembly's on. So we're gonna put our next point. We're gonna put the next part in the assembly, right? So what's the next thing we do? We have this highlighted, this assembly. We're gonna insert another part. Now this is gonna be the bottom shelf part, right? And again, I'm using example, but you should just be using, you should only have a few parts right now. You just created the first 3 parts. So what does that do? Bottom shelf. I'm gonna. So this is the thing you have to pay attention to. We're gonna attach it not to the parent assembly, but to the lower shelf part right here, and we're gonna choose that point, right? Because that point was on the bottom side of the top object, and now it's on the top side of the bottom object, and then we just hit OK. So basically, what did that do, right? That inserted this bottom shelf part, and it matched it up with that point that was on the surface of both of these, right? So there it is there. See that point right there? It's on that surface right in the middle. That is this point right here, right? Local coordinate system, but it's also this one, right? If I turn that off, it's also this local coordinate system right there, and that's on the bottom. So basically, that's all we're doing is you have a body, which is like how you form something, and then once you put that body into a part, you can also add a point. And that's like a reference point to then be used later when you're assembling. So that's all kind of like contextual, like why are we using parts and what's the difference between bodies and parts. Just think of like the body is how you form the object, and then you need to take that body, you need to put it into a part, but also with the part, you can add things, right? You can add like these local coordinate system points, which could be anywhere on that part or on that body. And then when you take that part and you put it into assembly, then you can use that point as a reference to align it to another part, right? So this is the part that's going to get interesting. So now we have the bottom shelf, and that's aligned perfectly. And then we have the lower shelf. So the next thing we need to do is add the lower post part. So again, click on the assembly, click insert part, and then for you, it's just going to be the lower post part. For me, it's the example lower post part, insert, and you can see that it's over here, right? Because this is the front. So what we need to do is select the lower shelf assembly, lower shelf part. Rename these as soon as you create them, so it doesn't get confusing. Because that's part of the problem with this is like you're just looking at a list of things. Lower shelf, bottom shelf, lower post assembly. So we're going to attach it to let me start over. Come up here, insert part. We're inserting the lower post part, but for you, it's going to be this one probably up here, right? And then we select parent object. We're going to select this one right here, lower shelf part assembly, right? And now we have all these points here, right? So what are we going to do? This is the point that's on this part. And then we have all of these points that we can attach it to. So we could put it in the middle, right? See? Now we see this in action because now we can actually make changes. But that point still exists. Even though we were using it to align these two, it's still an eligible point. Or we can choose that point, or that point, or that point, or that point, right? This is how you actually just like throw the part in the drawing, and then you don't have to like move it and like align it and change it. And then if you change something else, everything changes. It's going to be referencing these points, and those points are referencing that object. So if I move that object, it's going to move those points, which is going to move this thing, right? So this part will stay glued to that point no matter what. And if I need to change, for some reason, if I need to change any of these things, it's still glued onto that point. So what I'm going to do is I think I should select this one and then just come down here and hit rotate. right? So if I selected that one, I would need to do that. If I selected that one, I would need to do that. If I selected that one, I would need to do that. But basically, you're just doing the Z rotation. So you're rotating it on the Z axis. Just think about it that way. So let's start with hole 1, and let's do that, and then hit OK, right? And now you'll notice if I turn off the entire assembly, that right there, that lower post part, it's no longer turned on. So let me turn on all these, and then, yeah, part controls all of them now, right? So I turn off all my parts, turn on the assembly, there it is. So now we're only working in the assembly, and I'm also going to turn off that guy, because we don't need that. So just think about it as we have these 4 points right here in the assembly now, because they're referenced from this lower shelf, right? And then we can add more. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to rename this lower post part assembly, right? And then we're going to do it again. So we're going to insert part, right? Because the part is just like the model and it's all the data, right? But we're gonna basically insert it 4 times, right? So there'll be 4 lower post part assembly. Let's cancel that. Let's rename this to local post part local post part 1. Let's do that. So when we add another one, we're still going to select the lower post part, right? Or for you, lower post part. Mine's the example. And then when we select the lower shelf part assembly, right? We're going to select hole 2. And then we're going to, well, we don't need to rotate it, but if you needed to, it's right there, right? Hit OK. And then we're going to rename this part 2 assembly, right? Keep doing it. Insert part. Make sure that's selected. Insert part. Grab the lower post part. Make sure it's lower post part here. Yours won't say example, right? It brings it in right there because that's where it came from. We attach it to the lower shelf part assembly. It brings in all of these potential points. We're going to select the third one because we've already done 1 and 2, right? Because that's hole 1, hole 2, hole 3, hole 4. So those are the same numbers. And then we're just going to rotate it twice. And I don't know why it looks like that. Weird, but yeah. Hit OK. And you're good to go, right? Rename this. Right? And you're good to go. Select that. Select insert. Grab your lower post part. Insert it. Lower shelf part assembly. Hole 4. Rotate. Okay. Rename. Assembly. Right? So there we go. And all of these points are in the lower shelf part right here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then if there are more points, it's probably in here. Yep. So just know that your local coordinate system points are in there. You can turn those off visually, and you don't need them. So basically, we are all up to speed on that. And that, my friends, is how you put together an assembly in FreeCAD. So just to go over this, right? Let's turn off the assembly. what we started with, right, is just the bodies. Now you can see what's going on. You got the bodies here, right? And the bodies themselves have all the information. Like if we go to the lower post part, and then also you can just drag and drop. Oh, be careful not to drag these within each other. So we have the lower post part, lower shelf part, bottom shelf part. And I'm just trying to reorder these so that they make sense visually up here. And then we have the bottom shelf, which we'll put bottom shelf. Man. Yeah, okay. So lower post part 1, lower post part 2, lower post part 3, lower post part 4, lower shelf part, and then bottom shelf part. So these are all, you know, the ones that are up on the model are now kind of like up in the tree, right? So if I turn off all the parts and then I turn on the assembly, now we have this completely different thing. So you can think about it as like these bodies were created and then we put those bodies in the parts, and those are in the parts and those are in your parts folder. But now what we're also doing is we're inserting those parts into the assembly, which is now this other category up here, which is now it's all in here now. So you can completely turn off all the parts because you've added those parts into an assembly, and here they are again, right? These are just all the same parts, but they're now referenced in the assembly. And how we reference those in the assembly was the local coordinate system points, starting with this one, right? Which is basically right in between these two, and that's where they marry. So we created a local coordinate system point from the bottom of that piece in the assembly, and then we added that part to that, and then we added the bottom shelf part to that, and they were perfectly aligned. And then we turned on all of these points, right? We turned on all of the corner points, not that guy, right? We turned on all these corner points, and then we added the lower post part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, which is the same part, but as we inserted it, we just changed which local coordinate system point on the lower shelf part we wanted to reference. And those were named local coordinate system hole 1 through hole 4. So you can see how part 1 through part 4 corresponds to all of these, right? So if I look at this guy, it's aligned with that. And then I'll just select these. If I'm looking at that guy, it's on that point. And if I'm looking at that guy, it's on that point. And if I'm looking at that guy, it's on that point. Or that local coordinate system that is referenced from the hole. So that's it. That is a complete tutorial on how to assemble parts. Now, this was pretty easy because we were basically just like moving the part over and twisting it, but you might be, inserting that at an angle, right? But that doesn't matter because basically what you're doing is you're just kind of saying, like, if you wanted, like later what we're going to do is we're going to assemble, I'll show you on here. Later we're going to assemble this, right? And we're going to actually create this hinge. And what we're going to do is we're going to put a local coordinate system on the inside of the circle on this part and on the part that swivels. And then we're just going to literally say those two are the same. We're going to attach this guy that swivels to that. His local coordinate system is going to be the same as the local coordinate system point on the support system. And that's going to be enough. And then when we hit rotate, we'll hit rotate around like the X direction. I'm assuming, or maybe the Y direction. The Z is up and down. So yeah, we'll be rotating it in this direction. So that'll be the X axis, I think, if that's the red one. Yeah. So that's the video. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to continue on. I'll just give you a sneak peek of what we're going to do next. So if you come into here, turn off the assembly, turn on the parts, we have this lower post part here. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go back. This is for the next video, right? We're going to go back to parts design and we're going to create a body. And if it ends up being created inside of the assembly, all you have to do is drag that part up to here and it will exit out of there. So what was happening is we might be inside the assembly for some reason, create body. It was creating, see how it's creating it in nested inside here? So all you have to do is take that, throw it up there, and now that body is just floating inside of the actual file. So what we're gonna do there is create a sketch. Oh, you know what we have to do? We have to bring that in. So we have to take the body and then we have to select that and we have to hit this guy right here. So we're back to editing bodies, right? So remember that the way to edit these bodies is to actually bring in a binder, right? So now this body has, and we could rename this to middle shelf, right? And then middle shelf will be built on here. So what we can do is turn off that guy and really just turn off all the parts. And then we have this binder right here. And then we can start building on this. So we select that, we hit create a sketch. And what that's gonna do is allow us to build the middle shelf on that plane. And that's all we really needed to get to is that plane, because we're gonna do things like this anyway. Right? That's gonna be how we start this off anyway. And we'll just build it like this. Yeah. So that'll be for the next video. So stay tuned.